only strong ego, strong, actualized individuality can progress in this work. This is a fact. This is what required here. More sense of this self, not less of it.
Yeah, so I've been debating asking this question because I think there might be a tendency for me to make mountains out of molehills sometimes, you know that expression? But yeah, just a little bit of background, maybe to set the context. You know, before I found your work, I was really going through a tough time, like on this path, and I think like most seekers, especially in this new age, you kind of tend to get misled. And I went down the Eckhart Tolle path, and ego is bad, ego is wrong. It's this mental gymnastics that I was playing for like months that ultimately like left me just what felt like fragmented, like completely. You used the word depersonalized yesterday. Like that's really what I felt like, completely numb, like cut off from the world, from my body, like, and yeah, I was just like really in a pretty deep hole with no container to kind of ground this work and kind of like let me know where I was in that process. All that to say, ultimately, found your work and day by day, like kind of dug myself out of that. But yeah, yesterday's darshan, like, just like re-triggered something, or at least that's what it felt like. You used the term roadkill, and that one really just like cut deep, because that's exactly what it felt like. Like you get on the spiritual path to improve yourself and your relationships, and heal wounds, and it felt like I was just completely misled and just shoved to the side of the road and to die, literally. That's what it felt like at times. So yeah, when you mentioned that word, it's just like this wave of like anger and reliving that time in my life, just like bubbled up. And of course, mind gets involved, and it's like, am I going back there? And between then and now, I've kind of been in and out of that state of like dissociation, and it's, you ask those questions like, here we go again. Like, am I going to be like this forever? Like, how is this happening again? I work so hard, and I know the mind definitely gets in the way, but I don't want to just chalk it up to like, oh, this is the mind. Like, it almost feels like there's something like why is just thinking about that state where I was like re-triggering this experience? And it's not like I was talking to Kamala like before I was formulating this question. It's not even like I'm scared of a specific thing. It's like it's more fear of the fear that I felt in that state, fear of that numbness, and like I guess I'm wondering maybe there's more of a that feeling at the end of the day. It is a state of consciousness, right? It's all consciousness, and I know there's sort of like a clinical understanding of like dissociation, and like when you get scared, your body, at least this happens in me, I tend to like dissociate sometimes. But I'm wondering, like, practically speaking, like, is there, like, what's going on there? And how to when I sense that coming on, or when I sense myself, like it'd be so easy to say, don't think about it, right? But I was there for so long, it's like this, it's like drawing me back in that direction, it feels like. And I guess I'm just looking for, like deep down I know I'm fine and I'm gonna be okay. But yeah, there's just that like, yeah, I guess I'm just seeking either reassurance or like something practical here to like how to like sit with this, what I'm experiencing, because it's a scary place to be. And yeah.
It's one of those, Jake, when it's almost like since you showed up and it's now taking place like this, right? So it's two answers there. So it's one on the side to you, And one, since you brought it out into the open, has to be dealt with. The one on the side to you, simply, this is nothing for you to worry about. Absolutely. You know? And deep down, you know that. And even if it resurfaces just as that residue. You know? Just a residue of something that was there. If some kind of nasty stuff in a porous container was used, it's not easy to wash it off. See, whatever that was used, like turmeric or something less pleasant, like, I don't know, castor oil. You can't just swish it off. You can't even wash it off in the porous. It's still there. So this is what residue means here. This residue in the mental field, whatever we experienced, remains there. But as that on the side, Jake, like, don't even worry, like, you know, because it's like absolutely, you know. And you yourself kind of like very quickly understood and make these decisions. Right from the moment you came in Monterey, right, which was your first program, quite sometimes, it was autumn 2018, wasn't it? No, 18. Because this was our purported move to the States, which we have resigned, came to Mexico for 4 months, and that's why we had our first program here in February 2019. So that in Monterey and Ojai, the stay we had in the States. So I remember how you were there, I remember very well. And then you coming back, see, already with the very different experiences. So I can't resist. So from mental gymnastics now to like real physical gymnastics. Yeah, so, but I think physical gymnastics is still more fun, you know, because at least they tone the body. I'm not sure what mental gymnastics tones. Like whatever muscle being developed doesn't serve us. So, but maybe the question you're asking here, you're also asking on behalf of others as well. There's something to that, the actuality of the situation. And yes, indeed, that, funny enough, it's the first time I use that analogy. And it is a brutal analogy, roadkill, because this is how I have, this is what I experienced over so many years, seeing how there is this continued derailment of many sincere seekers, and whether this is part and parcel, maybe this is like a kind of a trail, you know, there is a like road blazer or rail blazer, if this consciousness cuts through the jungle, I don't know, there's something, we're finding a new way, and then these are casualties of the process. Who knows? Remember India? There was a talk I gave some years ago on Masts, with the example of Meher Baba, who is a lesser known Indian sage in India, revered as a saint. But still, the ashram, I think in California even, I don't know if it still exists, but Meher Baba was known for working with this particular group of seekers who have been derailed, known in India as Masts. Masts. It's those who have experienced and fallen to the degree of depersonalization that they regress to children, like toddlers. They eat and defecate in the same place. They are incapable of looking after themselves, and they're not even sadhus. They have the kind of like identity of their own in the collective consciousness. Nobody wants to deal with them because they're a nuisance. They're like, you know, sadhu, he's together. He may be skinny, he's this and that. He may be small, he may be covered in ashes, he may be covered in sandalwood. Doesn't matter. You have to feed him. Cultural agreement. This is how it is. Whatever you have, leftovers of this. But Masts don't even ask for food. These people are left to decay. And as early as, and this was, 100 years ago, maybe more, Meher Baba was doing these trips around India, the whole periphery of India. From state to state he will travel and methodically record, write down, these journals exist, with his followers doing this work and working with these Masts to give them chance to progress and not wither away. I don't know why they know it's not more widely known, because it was an extraordinary work. But I'm bringing this as an example. Can you imagine, even in India, there are these casualties en masse? There were like thousands of them. And these records, I think he did these trips 2 or 3 years in a row, maybe. There were several of these trips where they would also report, to leave this clinical report of who recovered, because he was able to help quite few. He's a very gifted sage. He had the capacity, he had the Shakti to do that. He would bring them out of that state of depersonalization and help them to progress. With some, progress as to have that, the desired, let's say, push to self-realization, what set them in the first place on this path. With others, at least, he managed to bring them back into the life, in terms of them having life, being able to function, get some kind of job, get some kind of ways and ability to look after themselves. So in what you shared and asked, there is this part, like mentioning that resurfaced something. Well, that's for you to sit with that. You see, why is it resurfaced? Not to analyze, but simply that it's like self-inquiry there, it propped up. So what is it? Is it sense of wasted years, sense of kind of like, well, what can we do? It's in the past, right? We can't lament about this. Let's turn it into something positive, see? Maybe this also, that wave, immediate wave of that anger you said, like even, right, accompanied by this, maybe it can progress into more benevolent and more productive, kind of like useful forms of expression. See? So you can also now contribute in your own way, as you do now, by joining the team. But in every way towards that, what you had experienced yourself, went through. Just as we have other team members who were even coming into this work allegedly from psychiatric clinic, straight into the retreat, straight into our programs. So, I don't know, this is, I guess it's a part and parcel of our time, right? There's so many teachings out there, and that malleable nature of the mind, how we create reality, how we give reality, its actuality based on how it is colored in our perception, in our cognition, in our understanding. Like revisiting what we've spoken, I think last night, yesterday evening, what is real, what is unreal here. So this is to remember. This is to, I think it's relevant to all of us, in a sense to how mind is capable turning things into reality by virtue of its malleability, and how it then begins to sculpt, carve out, create We can literally paint ourselves, as they say, into a corner, or we can literally be equipped with an extraordinary ability of perseverance, extraordinary display of all these qualities that are nothing short of what then set the example to follow, all down to the mind. So of course, mind is the greatest asset. Yes, we know that these conversations about the mind and like it's an ongoing dilemma, it's an ongoing, like some spiritual traditions, some teachers, some speakers undermine the mind. And this is part of the kind of chosen ways of. But in this work, we understand that if not for the mind, this whole thing is just making no sense. Because the mind here is that, in terms of that subtle, very, very refined way of how everything is structured, where we can reflect consciousness. And we reflect consciousness through the mind. So mind is that lens where we can contemplate the infinite through the finitude of mind. So the examples are also given is that consciousness, if to be compared to the sun, is blinding. We can't gaze on the sun. But we can enjoy the soothing rays of the moon as the sun rays bounce off its surface. And that's the direct analogy of the mind. So we contemplate the light of our consciousness, which bounces off the surface of the mind. That's what mind is, a reflective awareness. So direct gazing on a sun is dangerous because it can incinerate us. Certainly could make us blind, could damage the retina, directly speaking. But the analogy is given here. So it's like, it is for a reason why it is structured like that, why awareness is structured, why knowledge is structured in the way it is. So it's very, in my view, important to rehabilitate the mind. Likewise with this whole thing of the ego, which is becoming the chasing of one's own tail. The impossible job. Really can make one go wild. And I've seen people how disheartening, like how also, now just purely example wise, like one particular example, I was a young man, I remember, in the ashram, how this man was suffering definitely from something. And because he was going through very deep psychological breakdown, which he came to repair, but the whole teaching was somehow, one way or another, strongly emphasizing or holding ego as a culprit of all the calamities. So he will kind of like get the nastiest, the dirtiest of jobs, right? For example, in the ashram, there is this chain of changing how when you wash the dishes. For example, you come, you wash your dish, and someone comes behind you, and you offer them to wash their plate, and you wash 2 plates instead of 1, for example, right? And it's kind of like, but he would stand there for hours and wash after hundreds of people, all in sweats, wet completely, and it's like, that he's like trying to bring himself down. He's working on the ego, you see? And observing all this was bringing back then already these questions of what is held accountable here? What is really here that robs us somehow from the behind the scenes? Hence I consider what we have spoken as that discourse. Now I'm a little bit losing the sequence of it all when we talked about the perspective that is known, that coming from Tantra of Kashmir Shaivism. This in the language. When was that discourse? Yesterday? Yeah? Yeah, so it's very important that we mark this. You're marking them, yeah. So, but reflect just momentarily to what flashed out there. What's that kind of like? What's that? But there's no reason to worry, because you see that it's once we are aligned and once we know something that is working, there's no way to go back in like this. In this way, in this regard, there's no regressing. It's simply impossible. You see? It's simply impossible. It's also the value of teaching as well. That's the value of teaching, you see? It's like depersonalization is a particular outcome of a certain, let's say, disregard for what is taking place in terms of the actuality of experience, because it is disregarded, and then disregarded consciously. Certain degree of psychological immaturity, it affects people who are very trusting. Young people in particular are more prone to be affected by that. Those who really, really sincere in their predisposition. I would even say sincere and pure in their predisposition affects them even more. Because funny enough, someone who is more skeptical, it's kind of a safety valve there. The skeptical guy would kind of like always ready to halt that whole train, pull that trigger, stop the train. We entered the dark tunnel now. You know, so that's why there's nothing for you to worry, because you only unfold within yourself to yourself. You see? And that self which unfolds within for its own sake cannot now get depersonalized. Because it's simply, this is an extraordinary quicksilver-like quality of the mind. See? This is why certain teachers should be called a bluff, you know? Because they actually leave a trailblaze of these events, of these lives. It may all sound in the moment fantastic. It may all sound extraordinary. This teacher sets everyone free there. The whole damn audience is set free there, you know? Fostering only inadvertently, there is also another side to it. Working on that, it's working with something which needs to be probed, strengthened first, instead of knocking it off. Only strong ego, strong, actualized individuality can progress in this work. This is a fact. This is what required here. More sense of this self, not less of it. Of course, all this relevant selfishness, lack of altruism, lack of empathy, we're not talking about that. These are all these qualities that obviously are there in play and need to be checked and need to be examined. We need to look into that. But never at the expense of the most precious thing. This is what I said in the earlier days. There's nothing more precious than this sense of self. Who gives someone the right to knock it off? It's irresponsible. I would even say cowardly. Because it reinstalls that whoever sits there and promulgates this kind of teachings. See? Inadvertently make them look great. Because I'm sitting here egoless. BS. My ass. Quoting. So. the most important teachings, and like this is why routinely revisiting, from immersion to immersion, we're revisiting the basics, the fundamentals of the Trikashaivism, because it sets that platform. It sets that platform. You can work with that. You can implement that in your life, in your work. From immersion to immersion, we're doing that now. 2 years ago, I've decided this is the time we give this, no matter how short. We've tried it even in this city, European cities, weekend-long programs, and quite successfully so, if I might say. No? Those of you who have been with us in those programs, remember how in Vienna, who has been in Vienna? Yes, Miriam, Nora, Uda, remember? We've managed that to knock it off in Vienna, in the weekend in Poland. No, in the crushest possible kind of compacted way. But the discourse on the upayas, that's all one needs to know. The progressive, either in the ascending or in a descending order. The Shambhavu, the Shaktupaya, and the Anavapaya. The discourse on the language, which is the expression of the Shakti, which is at the matrix of all creation, at the fabric of awareness itself, how it expresses itself as this universe. All this is that's why. All this equilateral to contemplate, subject, Shiva, object, the rest of the world, the creation. I am concealing my essence in this form. So this experience is unique. Unique. This is pure subjectivity, universal egoity. It's a rehabilitating human experience rather than kicking it, rather than denying it. Rehabilitating. It's truly teaching that what was taught in all perennial traditions. This is the Adam Kadman. This is the Purusha. This is the primordial being. This is the primordial being, the limbs, it's this in the image of the Imago Dei. So it's all good.